Good morning. It is always a joy whenever I come to see all the faces that are a part of the preciousness of what God has as the church family. This morning, we're not going to jump into Christmas just yet in our preaching. We're going to do that next week. This morning, we're going to continue on in the book of Ephesians with that. So we're going to be chapter 4. I want you to picture with me Jesus appearing right here. Okay, he is here, and he's coming to you individually. Okay, not necessarily in the church here, but he's coming to you individually. And in his hands, he has this crystal bowl. And it's beautiful. It's got etching, it's got cherubim and all that kind of stuff on it, and it's got gold enlaced all around it with it. And he has this crystal bowl, and he comes. Yeah, we're not going to look at the crystal ball here, is it? Wrong religion. Okay, we got it. A crystal bowl. And he comes and he puts it into your hands. And he says, now I want you to carry this for me. Take care of it. How are you going to treat that? Are you going to spin it on your finger? Toss around. No, I don't think so. Stick it under your arm, put it in your back pocket, whatever. You got a big back pocket. I don't know. No, it's something that you're going to view that as something precious, something fragile, something you need to protect, to think about. Well, the bond of unity within our fellowship, our brothers and sisters, in a sense, that's what God has put within our hands, is this beautiful thing called the church, our brothers and sisters around. And yet the truth is it can sometimes be very fragile. And we'd like it to see something that was really rugged, that you could drop it and bounce around and it wouldn't have any problems. But experience shows us is that Christian unity can sometimes be very fragile. And he has put it in your hands. And I want to ask, what are you doing to safeguard, to protect the bond of Christian unity? Because it does take each of us to make it work. We're going to be looking in chapter 4 now of Ephesians. And I just want to read the first verse here, chapter 4. Therefore I, the prisoner of the Lord, implore you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling which you have been called. Okay, I'm just going to stop there for right now. We're getting in there. We're going to go slowly here a little bit. Paul is very purposeful when he preaches. He uses his words very carefully. So when Paul starts off talking about I, the prisoner of the Lord, he's doing that for a specific purpose. In fact, when he started the book here of Ephesians, he described himself as the apostle of the Lord. Now, he did that to establish his authority because he's writing to people where there's some conflict, and so he wants to establish his authority. But now he uses a different phrase. He talks of himself as the prisoner of the Lord. Now, and he's very purposeful with that as well. Because Paul is going to address a subject that he wants them to understand that we as Christians, and Paul's using himself as an example, can't always have it the way we would like it. That sometimes as we walk in the Lord, that things aren't necessarily comfortable, aren't necessarily the way we would like them to be. And sometimes we forget that. I heard a story, that's always is stuck with me. It's a story of a missionary gal who was over in Papua New Guinea. And she was saying that they had a church that she had been working with. And it happened that there was a young girl, I don't know, probably around 9 or 10, that began coming to the services, except for she was too frightened to come in. And so she would just sit outside the door and listen to the service. And at first she was very timid. The missionary would come and try to talk with her, but she always shied away. But eventually the missionary, she could get there, and she would sit down and talk with this young girl. And found out that this young girl come from a very rough home. Her father was a drunkard and was very much against Christianity. I think there's some Muslim aspect there, but whatever. That there was very much some animosity against Christianity. And so she was afraid, but eventually she began to actually come in the church and to listen. And after a while, she finally decided that she was going to become a Christian. She wanted to be baptized. And so on that day, that Sunday when it happened, she was very poor, and so the missionary gave her this pretty white dress for her baptismal Sunday. And she was baptized, and she was so excited. But that next Sunday, she didn't show up for church. And she didn't show up for the evening thing either. And the missionary gal began to be concerned, and so she began setting out, trying to find out what happened to her. And she found out that her father, finding out that she had been baptized, was very angry and did not allow her to come to church next Sunday. In fact, beat her severely. And so the missionary went to the home when she found that out. And she came in, and the father was gone, but the home was in a shambles. And she found in a corner the little girl laying underneath some broken stuff. And the little girl was still alive, but she was broken and bleeding. She was in her white dress, but it was torn and stained with blood. And she picked up the little girl, and she by now it's dark, but she carried her through the jungle to a couple miles to where a missionary doctor was. And the doctor looked her over and said, "I'm sorry. There's just too much damage. And all we really can do is maybe clean her up. We can take the dress off her and clean her up." And the little girl at this point was conscious, and she said, "No, don't take my dress. When I see Jesus, I want him to see my dress." And they said, "Well, honey, it's stained. It's all bloody. At least if we can take it off and wash it." And she said, "No. When I see Jesus, I want him to see the blood that I shed for him." Sometimes we, and I say me, and that we can forget what it means to lay down our life for Jesus Christ. And when things don't go our way, we get frustrated. And we get angry. And we say it's not fair. Paul said, "I, the prisoner of the Lord, who sit in chains, implore you." The word there means to beseech, to beg. "I beg you." He's talking to his church, his people, the people that he served. "I beg you to walk in a manner worthy of the Lord." Now, what does that mean, to walk in a manner worthy? He talks about the calling, worthy of the calling. Now, Paul always is very systematic. He builds his argument. And the calling, he talked about the calling in chapter 1 and how that Christ's calling came to us not through works but through grace. And how in chapter 2 talks about how we had been called the uncircumcised, the far away, and now we have a calling that they're close, we're servants. We all are together. This calling that brought us to God in the midst of our own sin, in the midst of our struggles. He says, remember what your calling is. Remember what that has done. Now I beseech you to walk in a manner worthy of that calling. Now, what does worthy look like? It means we have our ducks in a row. It means we have our theology correct. It means that we are righteous, that we don't drink, we don't smoke, and we don't chew, and we don't date girls who do. You know, all kind of stuff. That's what it means to be worthy. Well, actually, Paul tells us, as he goes on, he kind of tells us exactly what it means to walk in a manner worthy of the Lord. Let me read verse 2. "With all humility and gentleness and patience, showing forbearance for one another in love." Okay, again, we're going to stop there. In all humility. You're going to move me back. You're going to move me further away. I'm spitting on you. I'm sorry. He's going to move me further away. That's okay. There we go. Get me back in the windbreak. Thank you, Paul. Humility. One of the things God put in my heart when we first came here was the two most important qualities. Now, I know I've preached on this a number of times, and I'm not even going to apologize, though, because to me this is crucial. Two most important qualities for don't trip over cords. And most important qualities for ministry, or really just to be. I'm moving it over here. There we go. To walk in the Lord is humility and patience. It's not wisdom. It's not ability. It's not all that. It's humility and patience. Pride is one of the biggest obstacles to Christianity, period. I think it's our greatest. Because pride lifts us up here And when we hold on to pride, when we hold on to me and mine and what I deserve and what I ought to have, it not only interferes with our relationship with each other, but it interferes with our relationship with God. Okay? I have known people in the church that have come into situations, either they have sinned or something has happened to them, and they've held on to their pride. And by holding on to that pride, it broke relationships, it even destroyed marriages, it ruined reputations, but by golly, they held on to their pride. Pride is something that Satan likes to bring up to us, to tell us to hold on, but it destroys who we are. Scripture a couple times in James and in Peter, it tells us that God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. You understand what that means? That even if somebody has wronged you, they're in the wrong. You've done nothing wrong. But if you're going to hold on to your pride in that area, that they're going to need to fess up, they're going to need to stand up, they're going to need to, if you hold on to your pride, you have made yourself an enemy with God. Even if you did nothing else wrong. You have put him in opposition to you, and not only in that one area, but that means he is now in opposition to you, to your hopes, to your dreams, to your directions, and you hold on, you wonder, why am I not experiencing the blessing of God? And it's because we're still holding on to the aspect of pride. Of course, humility is the opposite of that, of willingness to lay that down before God and to say, God, I will give this to you. Again, probably, and I know my story that I've shared a couple times, but again, it's okay. You can't remember what I say anyway, so it's okay. When we first came here, I was out on the islands, and we were out there. We came with a short-term team, and we were going to do some teaching. And we were with a group, and so we went out to one village, and the plan was there was two other guys who were going to do teaching in the morning, and then I was going to do teaching in the afternoon. You know, and I love to teach. Okay, that's one of my favorite things. And so we did that, and the guys in the morning, they did their teaching, and they did okay, you know, but they weren't trained necessarily, but they were good guys. They did their teaching, and it was fine. And so then we had the afternoon, and it came time for me, and there was a rainstorm just dumped out there, and so nobody came. Nobody came. I thought, no, it's okay. It's okay. I can deal with this. You know, it's all right. I'll teach tomorrow. It's okay. So tomorrow we have the thing. Again, the guys teach, and they do okay. They do fine. But now it's really hot, and everybody's taking a nap, and nobody comes to my teaching again. And I'm going, God, come on now. I'm the good guy here, and yet nothing's happening here. You know, and now there was a number of other things. I fell out of the boat in the water. And I mean, there's just a number of things, you know. And finally, God got through to me. And that's where he really said, what I need in a servant is humility and patience. And humility is not just not lifting ourselves up. It's not just not being, I'm the important one. Humility is the choice of saying, I will choose to lift others up even if I don't think they deserve it. Even if I'm not sure they are as deserving as myself. Even if I don't get what I want, I will choose to lift up and serve those around me. When God finally got through to me, and I decided to stop worrying about whether or not I would teach or whether or not I would speak, and just to look for opportunities to serve and encourage those who are speaking, to encourage them. Well done. Well done. To look for opportunities to serve, whether it be the washing of the dishes or the cleaning of the floors. It didn't matter, but to say, God, I will lift up others. And when I did that, then God began to use those other opportunities for me to be able to connect with people in ways that I never could have if I would have been doing it according to my will. Humility is the choice that says, I will lift up those around me. And I will encourage, whether or not I think they deserve to have what it is, I will trust God in it, and I will choose to serve. Patience, which Paul also talks about walking in. Patience is not just waiting for good things to happen to you. It's not just waiting for the things to happen that you want them to. That's not patience. Patience, God, this is what God put on my heart as well. Patience is the willingness to say, God, I will serve you here. I will entrust you the future, And I will seek to do what you want me to do here, now, in the midst of wherever I'm at. My goal is not to get out, not to get beyond, but rather to please you where I am. That's patience. And that's when God can begin to work and to begin to develop us. Because understand, a lot of the times when we're going through things that we're not supposed to go through, we keep telling God that. We're not supposed to here. It's because God is trying to teach us something. And when we ignore that, when we decide where our focus is how to get out of it, we doom ourselves to repeat it over and over again because we haven't learned the lesson. God is trying to help us grow, and we're missing it. But when we allow ourselves to say, God, I will seek you here and now, it allows us to actually learn some things that God is teaching us, which then enables him to move us beyond that which we're struggling in. Gentleness. Gentleness is a choice. Rudeness is one of my pet. You can't really get off on a step on a soapbox when you're already preaching, I guess. But rudeness is kind of one of my peeves, is that we don't have to be rude to each other. We can choose to be kind. We can choose to be gentle. We can choose to be careful with our words, to be kind. Those are choices. There's a lot of things in this world you can't choose, but you can choose how to respond to people. Yeah, you may get upset, you're up there, but you can choose how I'm going to do it. And it really not only does it benefit them when you're kind and gentle, it benefits you. It really does. If I come up to Brian, and for some reason I really want this chair, okay? I really want this chair. No. This chair, right here. This one right here, okay? Now, if I come up to Brian and says, I want this chair, move. Now, it's hard telling he might just kick me in the shin or something out there. If he's a really good guy, he might move, but then he's really going to be annoyed at me from then on. But if I come up to him and say, hey, Brian, you know what? This chair means a lot to me. Would you mind really shifting and let me have it? It would mean so much to me. Oh, man. Now, which is he more likely to respond to? Yeah. When we choose how we respond to people, and maybe not just in trying to get something from them. People understand that after a while. They know you're phony. But if you just try to live in an aspect of kindness, of gentleness, you're going to find people are going to respond to you differently. They're going to be more open to you, and when you need things, they're going to be there. When you can be able to reach to them. Gentleness is a choice. It takes work. It does. Because we're naturally focused on me, mine. I want this now, and I want it how I want it now. But if we can try to focus a little bit on how the people are going to respond, of what's going on in their lives, just to choose gentleness, we're going to find it really does work in a way far better. And tolerance. Tolerance in love. The word there literally means to put up with, to suffer with, to endure. The truth is that there are some people within the church that you're not going to get along with. That just is the way it is. All right? But how you deal with it. Now, you could just decide, with people that you don't get along with, you could just decide, I'm just going to avoid them. I'm going to ignore them, and I'm going to avoid them. Now, that's better than throwing things at them. Okay? All right. And if it's me that's annoying you, don't throw things. Okay? Just ignore me then. That's fine. But we are called to do more than just endure. We're called tolerance in love. Which means it's a choice again I make that I am going to suffer with this person out of love. Because of what God has done for me. Because that person is precious in the sight of God. Because they are a part of the body of God. They are a part of who I am. I am going to make the choice to get along. The truth is, as we have found, is that you really can get along with just about most anybody. You really can, if you choose to. If you're looking for the positives, what you do is you look for their good points. You know, sometimes you have to really look, but they're there. Most people, they got something there. Maybe they got a nice nostril or something. I don't know, whatever it is. But you can find something, okay? And if you focus on those areas, you're going to find you can deal with the other things, okay? If you choose to. And the amazing thing is that if you are looking at people and you're going to choose to like them, tendency they're going to like you because of how you're responding. If you actually show an interest in them and that you care about them, they're more likely to respond positively to you. It's a choice that we make. I heard a story of two guys who were shipwrecked on an island, out on a deserted island out there, and they were there for a couple of years, and finally a ship came by and to rescue them, and the captain of the ship, he came onto the land, and he was talking to the guys, and he noticed up on the hill there were 3 buildings, or 3 huts, whatever they built up there. And he said, "What are those 3 things there?" And he said, "Oh, that's our church." And he says, "Church, why you got 3 up there?" And they said, "Well, we had one at first. We were both in, but then we couldn't agree, so we had a church split over. And so one guy left, and then I had an argument with myself, and I couldn't agree. So then I built another one, and the truth is that we in the church, we have a trouble sometimes. Is that we don't always get along. Okay, we don't always work. And sometimes we have to choose whether or not to tolerate, to put up with, to suffer with, or just to say, you know what, I'm just not dealing with that person anymore. But love is a choice that says, I will treat that person in a way, even if I don't feel kind. 1 Corinthians 13 tells us about what love is. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not brag. It is not arrogant. It is not provoked. Okay? Notice nowhere does it talk about warm, fuzzy feelings. It talks about how you treat somebody. Love is about how we treat one another, and we can make that choice. We may not always feel warm towards someone, but we can still choose to treat them in a loving manner. Right? I was talking to somebody once, and they were dealing with the issue where there was another Christian brother who was treating them badly. They were saying bad things about them. And it was undeserved, and they were saying bad things, and they were harming their reputation, and they're going, but how, and we talked about that, and forgiveness and that kind of thing. And then he says, but how do I deal with that person? Because I'm going to see them around, and I'm going to see them, and how do I deal with that person? I don't know how I'm supposed to treat them. And I said, sure you do. You know how you're supposed to treat them. Same as you always have. You greet them, you smile. You don't talk nasty about them. You treat them with kindness. You're polite. You treat them in a manner you would want them to treat you. But what if they don't respond well? That's a risk. But it doesn't matter. You're not in charge of how that works. You're in charge of walking according to what God has called you to do. And as you deal with that, God's going to deal with that person. That's up to you. And I've heard stories of where people, they came and they've asked forgiveness or whatever, and the other person changed, and that happens sometimes. When we reach out and we humble ourselves, it can change, but sometimes it doesn't. Okay, let's just be honest. Sometimes they're still not going to be nice to you, but God says that's my job. Okay, you walk how I called you to walk. You treat them in a manner that is worthy of your calling. And let me deal with what goes on. Let me continue on here in chapter 4. Be diligent to preserve the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body, one Spirit, just as you also called, and one hope of your calling. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who over all and through all and in all. But to each one of us is given grace according to the measure of Christ's gift. One. We are one body. We belong to Jesus Christ. We don't have the choice of saying, I'm one with these guys, but I'm not over there. One body, one flesh, one calling, one baptism. And yet we are very different people. And it's not always about right and wrong. Sometimes it's just a matter of we see things differently. Look out over there. Okay, look out over there. Now, come on, turn your heads. Okay, look out there. What do you see? Okay, what's one thing that strikes you when you look out there? Palm trees. Okay. Liam, what's one thing that strikes you when you look out there? A wall. Okay, Gert John, what's one thing that strikes you when you look out there? Your beautiful wife. You can't see beyond her. I know it. Thank you very much. Okay. Well done. Okay, if we will look out there, some of us see, but we're going to see grass, we're going to see wall, we're going to see pine, we're going to see different things, okay? And not only are we going to see different things, but we are going to respond to it differently. Some of you see the grass and you're going, oh, I love grass. Go out and lay on it. Some of you have to cut that stuff and you're going, oh, man, that's a lot of grass. I don't want that. Some of you are seeing trees and you want to go out and hug that tree. You love that tree. That's a love tree. Other ones, you fell down off of a tree when you were a kid and broke your leg, and you want an axe. Get rid of that stupid thing. We respond differently. But you know what? It's not wrong. In fact, it is supposed to be that way. 1 Corinthians 12 goes on and talks about that we are all a part of one body, but we are different, and we're supposed to be different. We need each other's differences. Without that, we are stilted. And yet, I had a friend who used to walk around and say, now, the way I see it, which is the way it ought to be seen, is this. Now, he did it in jest. But a lot of times that is how we approach it. The way I see it, which is the way it ought to be seen, is this. And we struggle with people who don't see it that way. Now, sometimes we tolerate them, but how much do you value them? That God put them there. He put them there for a purpose, and they have a different spirit. The problem is when we decide everyone has to be able to do it my way. And if you don't, you're wrong. Then we become a stilted body that limps along, crippled. We were made to be different. And that's what brings us the strength when we value that and build that up and encourage that for the sake of the body. For the sake of being one. Be diligent. That literally means do everything in your power to preserve the bond of unity. What are you doing to build up the bond of unity? Are you working at encouraging your brothers and sisters? Are you looking for their needs, how to be able to meet? Are you forgiving? The thing is that a lot of times we don't always do what we're supposed to do. And we say something we shouldn't say. And we put our foot in our mouth and we do something we shouldn't do. If you want grace of God, we have to learn how to give grace to others. Okay? And one of the people we have to learn to give grace to is ourselves. Sometimes we blow it. Okay? That's just it. I'm not perfect. I know that's a surprise to you. Okay. But after a while, I've learned to live with that one. And especially that I have a God of grace who loves me anyway. And so sometimes I have to first come to God and say, God, I blew it again. And our God is an amazing God that His grace covers that. Now, I may have to go to my brother and sister and ask forgiveness. That's work, but that's part of it. But the great thing is that our God is a God who covers our sins. And He cleanses us so that even when we mess up, God says, my grace can cover that, okay? So I want to encourage you. Look for opportunities to build up the bond of unity. Encourage your brothers and sisters. And when someone says something, decide to look on the better side of it. Decide to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they didn't mean that my nose looks really fat and ugly this morning. I don't know. Maybe it's a compliment. Choose to build up the unity. Choose not to take offense. Choose to decide to tolerate. Choose to love anyway. And work at that. Because when we do that, we're going to see God do things that we can never do. And the church is going to grow and it's going to be established. The sad thing is that one of the biggest problems we have in the church is brothers and sisters. And one of the biggest reasons why missionaries go home is fellow missionaries. And it's a choice we have to make, is that I'm going to choose to build up the unity. Whatever else comes, I will choose to love. I will choose to forgive. And I will choose to humble myself and to build those around me. If there's, this morning as we're going to have our hymn of invitation, if there is someone here that you need to come to and say, you know what, maybe I just want to encourage you, or maybe I need to apologize, do that. Don't let it continue on. Let go of the pride. And I'm willing to humble yourself before God that He can lift you up. choose to build the bond of unity with each other. I'm going to turn over to the worship team now.